Hello again! By the end of this video, you'll be able to wow your audience with 10 tools that will really knock their socks off. Really? Absolutely! You don't need 10 tools. Yeah, you got him, the biggest tool of the lot. I'm not sure you should grab your audience or a tool. No, I never grab my audience, and they never complain. At the end of every one of my presentations was just the sound of silence. Why does that not surprise me? However, if you'd like to avoid the sound of awed silence, here's 10 easy ways to do just that. The 10 kapows. Kapows work singly or grouped together, a veritable orgy of kapows. The key when adding a kapow is to be in control of the bridge from the kapow, that's the grab, to your presentation. So it makes a point. In other words, make the kapow relevant to the presentation and the audience and make that relevance clear. Drum roll please, and here they are. Top of the list, we have the top 3, which are the most powerful and most commonly used in virtual presenting. But have a look in your handbook at some of the others. Use them in the beginning, the middle, and at the end of your presentation. Because far too many presentations, while starting with a bang, can very often end with a whimper. Let's start with the interactive or participative kapow, which is a great way to really engage your audience. Or, what are your thoughts on using participation? Do you ever use it? And can you see it working on you right now? Next we have story. And this for me is probably the most powerful of all the kapows. It's the gold. Story is the thing that will land your presentation. And in the handbook, I've got loads and loads of ideas on how you can do just this. I'll give you an example. So a few years ago, I was running a workshop at a manufacturing company, and I got to the bit about stories. And before I'd started, one of the group members piped up. She said, I just want you to know before we start that I don't actually like stories. I stopped for a moment and asked her why. Well, I just don't like them, she said. And she sort of said it in a way that said, and please don't ask me that question again. And I didn't, because fortunately someone in the group asked her instead. And then another and another, until finally she said, all right, the reason I don't like stories is... And she promptly told a story to explain why she didn't like stories. You see, we are storytelling animals. It's how you communicate. Already today you've probably told stories, and we can no more stop telling stories than stop breathing. If you are trying to explain something to someone and they just don't get it, at some point you will stop and say something like, all right, it's a bit like, and then tell a story to explain. The third one is surprise. And I just used that a bit earlier when I introduced the kapows, when I did it rather dramatically and over the top. Now check up some other kapows in the handbook and go through your presentation. This is your actions. Go into your action sheet and look at all the places where a kapow would really lift your presentation. Then, and this is crucial, make sure you have a clear bridge from the kapow to the point you're making in your presentation. Run it past a colleague to make sure it's all super clear, and your presentation will already be knocking the socks off your audience.